Today on another Outside the Box Reviews Giant Monster Monday, we are taking a look at the NECA Godzilla 1985. Or 1984 if you want to be technical. And this is a little exciting for me. This is the first time that NECA has released a Godzilla figure where there hasn't been the specter of SH Monster Arts looming directly over it. Obviously, there is no reason why Monster Arts could not make this version of Godzilla, and I fully expect they eventually will, but as of this recording, it has not been announced, and nothing exists, so I have nothing else to make a direct comparison to. It's also my first Godzilla 1984 figure, so it's a first in my collection. I am very curious, though, that my assumption is that it looks like NECA is hitting the anniversary suits, which is not a bad move. They hit Space Godzilla from 1994, they hit Godzilla in 1984, and of course the 2014 Godzilla they've done. They've also already announced they're doing a 54. So it does seem like a logical choice to do in line for that reason, but Godzilla 1984 or 85 has never been released on DVD in the United States, so it's one of the harder movies to watch these days. And I do have to kind of wonder if not being able to go and see this movie easily is going to affect NECA's sales of this guy. Before we can even get into Godzilla's head sculpt here, we kind of have to talk about the controversy surrounding it. Back, I believe, at San Diego Comic-Con, they revealed this figure with a completely different head, and the backlash was severe. There was a lot of fan uproar about how horrible the head sculpt was, and you can see for yourself what it looked like. It wasn't good. Now that this guy's out, I really do like the redone head sculpt. I've heard some grumblings about it online, but the older Godzillas are a little harder to capture in plastic just because they did use different props to make Godzilla's look. Sometimes you'd have the suit, sometimes you'd have a puppet, sometimes you'd have a giant robot Godzilla as they did in this movie. So it does all get a little confusing when you're trying to combine reference material. But I really like the look NECA gave him here. He has kind of a shorter snout on him than your traditional Godzilla. Also kind of a larger head in general. We've got ears, which is kind of an old school touch to the character design. A very heavy brow, very large eyes. And one of the most noticeable factors are his fangs. The big fangs up front and then some smaller ones down below. NECA did a very good job with the paint on here as well. The teeth have a nice brown hue to them. The tongue has some good detailing as well. We even have some sculpting done on the roof of the mouth, which is great. The eyes are a nice brown and well painted. The skin is a charcoal gray, but there is some kind of bluish teal hues mixed in to highlight some areas. And I've made this complaint with NECA's line already. The sculpting doesn't seem quite as deep as it should be, and the plastic is a little shinier than I'd like it to be. But that seems to be kind of a universal complaint with this Godzilla line for me, and mostly because I just prefer the aesthetic that Monster Arts creates with theirs. So that may be more of a personal preference than anything else, but they still did a very good job with his head. He has kind of a shorter neck, and then his body has a little odd shape to it. The chest is pretty small, not as big and barrel-chested as most of the other versions of Godzilla. We've got some different lines in here, a nice texture to the scales though. Here on the back, he has some pretty small spines. I do think in the movie these were actually a bit larger. These do still look a bit downsized, particularly this guy right back here. I remember seeing some stills from the film and it did seem like it stuck out quite a bit. But these are all rubberized plastic, so they are pliable, so when you articulate the figure, they're not going to get in the way. They also kind of have a nice grayish blue shading to them and then the white on the tips, which looks very nice. Here you can see the 3 rows going all the way down the spine of Godzilla. Lower torso is a little iffy. I really don't know how I feel about it. The hips are a little wide. He looks a little chubby. It was normal to carry a lot of the weight in the lower section of the Godzilla suit just to help the actor balance, but it almost seems like the hips should be raised up almost to the very top where this mid-torso joint is, just to make it even out a little better. The legs themselves are decent as well, big kind of thick thighs on them. This lower section of the leg seems a bit long. It's another thing where it feels like the leg up here should have continued down a bit further before bending for the articulation. And then his feet are nicely sculpted, but maybe just a bit small. The tail is what we expect from NECA, very well done. This back part has to be attached separately, comes separate in the package. It's not a particularly long tail, but it looks pretty good. It has a rough underside to it, which is movie accurate to this suit and one of the few suits that has it. No real detail on the bottom of the feet, but he does have some peg holes. For articulation, he has dual ball joints in his neck, so he has one at the very top and one at the bottom. They work decently together and move up and down. I almost wish it would go a little further, but it's not too bad. He'll also swivel side to side and pivot and all that good stuff. We have a hinge in the jaw, letting him open his mouth really wide, which is great. Pin socket shoulders, and go out to the side a fair amount, maybe about 45 degrees to the body. There is kind of an indentation in the side of the body here where the arms can kind of sit in a neutral pose. They'll also rotate forward and backwards. We have a swivel and a bend at the elbow, about a 90-degree bend, so good articulation range there. And then we have what I believe are ball joints in the wrist, but all I can really get out of them pretty much is some rotation. Not a whole lot of in and out. I'm freeing up this joint a little bit now that I'm messing with it more. You have the mid-torso ball joint with a great range of articulation. You move side to side very freely, forward and back a little bit. As I already mentioned, the plates don't hinder anything. Ball joints in the waist, so you can go in and out, forward and back, kind of along the V cut of the crotch here. We have a bend at the knee, which has a decent range, as well as a swivel, a ball joint at the foot with a good range of motion. A couple segments of the tail back here are on ball joints, so you can move them on their own, and then a bendy wire back in the end of this tail here. So overall, I feel like I've been really harsh on this figure in this review. But all the things I've pointed out, really at the end of the day, I feel are very nitpicky. There's small details that annoy me a little bit, but I still like this figure. I think the sculpt is overall very well done, especially seeing where NECA started from, and I'm so glad they didn't release that figure because that would have been a serious misstep. But the sculpt overall is pretty solid, the articulation works well, and I'm very happy to finally have a 1984 Godzilla to put in my collection. Really, I'm very happy to finally be able to officially buy something 1984 Godzilla. I haven't had anything with this guy's likeness or anything in it outside of a t-shirt and some books. Maybe eventually they'll get off their butts and release the movie in the United States so I can actually add that to my collection and finish all my Godzilla movies being in my collection. But that's its own thing. So yeah, I am going to recommend this figure. I know there are going to be some purists who aren't a huge fan of it, but I think he's worth picking up, especially for the price point that NECA puts him out on. I'm constantly reminded by you guys when I do compare these guys to the Monster Arts version that these figures from NECA do really come very close to being the same level that Bandai puts out without costing nearly as much. Kind of have to give it to NECA on this one. And I'm kind of happy to go back and review one of their figures all on its own and not have to compare the two, because in a comparison, I think NECA's always going to lose between the two in my book, but in reality, it's still a great figure. And moving forward, I'm really excited for the next figure coming out in NECA's line, the Godzilla 1954, the original Godzilla. That is definitely a must-get for me. And as I said before, it looks like they're doing the anniversary figures, so a 64, once again, a figure Monster Arts has already tackled, but I wouldn't mind seeing NECA's take on it. 1974 is another one I definitely like, and a 2004 would be awesome for me. So I'm kind of hoping they keep hitting these decade landmark figures for Godzilla at least for a little while longer. Make sure you check me out on Instagram, username Outside the Box Reviews. Also check me out on Facebook, link below. And until next time, this has been their Outside the Box Reviews, Giant Monster Monday. Stay tuned for more to come.